Welcome to the hottest real estate topics on the planet, keeping you up to date with all the creative ways to buy and sell real estate without bank qualifying, so anyone can build real income starting today. Here is another great show with Dealmaker Bill and Pete the Rookie.
All right, here we are in another episode of Flipping Houses for Rookies. Hey, Peter.
Morning, Bill.
So we're at episode number 210, brother. 210. Boy, we're a bunch of old bastards, aren't we?
Jesus, Bill, when do we retire? Damn it.
Right. So here we go. You ready?
Yeah.
You're going to go like, wow. You're going to do this, Bill? As soon as I read you this. You ready?
Oh, God. Okay,
Here
I'm
we
sitting
go.
down. That's why I'm always sitting down for this. Go ahead.
Paperwork we use to do creative real estate deals easily.
Well, wait a minute. Am I supposed to be surprised? I've been poring over my paperwork. Wait a minute. Which forms are we on now?
Yeah, exactly.
Wait a minute. If I use this one to start and I can back up with... No, wait a minute. I should do this one for this. Okay, I got them all. We'll check with Bill tomorrow. Yeah,
It's
paperwork. Go for it.
It's a known fact that the biggest barrier to most real estate investors' entry into the extremely profitable industry is fear. Oh my God. And I personally believe this comes from the not knowing which wild animal in the jungle is poisonous and can kill you and which one won't.
Or which plants in the yard won't give you poison on your arm.
No.
It wasn't poison ivy. What the heck was that?
That's
it's
poison
going
ivy.
away. Damn. That's
Legal-
something else. Yeah, well.
Legal considerations could be the biggest monster in most minds of anyone who does not understand it, which to me means the savvy investors somehow get through this wall of fire to only flourish and prosper on their terms in life.
Yep.
In this one-of-a-kind podcast, I am going to explain to you the paperwork that, if signed, is risking everything you own, and which paperwork has no risk at all. My intention is to leave you with this episode knowing that every time you sign your name on documents and don't fulfill your agreement, you won't be hunted down personally, without even bothering with the house. So,
You mean there's paperwork you can sign. You can put your name on it
Yep.
and not get in trouble.
or there's paperwork they'll hunt you down like a wild animal, even though the house is gone.
Even though
the house is gone. Yeah, they'll still chase you.
No, that's really scary. No,
Okay.
that one we know. Like, don't sign anything, you'll be in trouble. But the fact that there's paperwork you can sign, you can put your name on, and there's no risk.
Right.
What's that? The no risk paperwork?
Yes.
Okay.
And you will soon
risk.
see how controlling and owning real estate is a fearless game without many opponents once you do what this episode will teach you to do. If you have a vaccine for a disease, the disease becomes powerless. This podcast is that vaccine for the disease called fear.
Gee, Bill, what made you use that analogy?
Yeah, the news.
Yeah, the news. You know, it's funny you say that. I was just talking to one of our friends. I'll tell you his name later. And he said, how you doing with the real estate? Fine. And I said, so when you want to do some stuff, he goes, to tell you the truth, because you weren't around, he goes, it really scares me. And he knows better, right? I said, what do you, like what?
I'll call him
What are you
later.
scared
I'll call him later
Yeah.
and yell at him.
Yeah. Oh, that'll scare him less. I'm serious. He was like, I'm scared. Like, of what? Oh, God.
This is true. Okay, just check all my devices here, make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. Looks like we're on Facebook, right?
Yeah, I have the live on Facebook icon in the corner, so I
Okay,
know
good.
we're all right.
All right, good, because I don't see anybody on there yet, which is unusual. But we started a little bit early, so. All right, here we go, Peter.
Yep.
So today's going to be a little bit, well, the last dozen podcasts have been really deep, if you haven't noticed. I know you have. And today is going to be the same, so I'm going to try to do my best to move right along and keep it around 90 minutes. I don't think we're going to be able to do that, but let's see what happens. These podcasts lately, I've been trying to do them to help some of my coaching clients, and obviously if you're just a listener and not a coaching client, then you'll benefit from these as well. But I've been using these as some training for other guys, which is bizarre to do, but I am doing it. So let's get started. You ready?
Got it.
Most think that every time you sign your name on a real estate document, you're risking everything you own to fulfill that debt. That's what most people think. And in most states, creditors can sue for the default on those documents and come after you personally without even bothering with the house.
Yeah.
Right? So I won't go off on the liberal tangent in Connecticut, but we're definitely one of them.
Oh yeah, like we're not helpful in any way. You know, it's okay.
Right. But, so the fear underlying most new or amateur investors really is they will lose all their other assets to satisfy the obligation that is in writing and that they signed for a piece of real estate. Right?
Yep.
But worry no longer. This one single podcast is going to inform you enough to kill those ghosts and goblins floating around in your head like weed killer wipes out the weeds on a sidewalk on a summer day. How's that? We're killing weeds now.
Nice imagery, Bill.
Yeah. So here's why, Peter. I'm just going to name off 4 things and we will cover them throughout this podcast, okay? So here's why you should not have fear. And if you're listening to this podcast either now or after we recorded it, obviously, you should write these down. And these 4 things you should, you know how they do affirmations, put it above your bed at night, put it on the mirror. You should do that with these because you don't know these 4 things, you have fear. Right? So what is really fear anyways? Right? Fear is the unknown, right?
It's the unknown that could happen in the future.
Right. So because there's unknown, think of it this way, Peter, and you know this, your mind is always going to work. Right? So
It's gonna,
if you don't have a problem, what's your mind going to do?
Oh, gonna go find one. I could tell you stories, but I'm not gonna. You'll look for trouble. You'll find something to complain about.
And this will happen subconsciously, right?
Yeah, you just look around and... Okay, sorry. I walked into the kitchen yesterday. My mother was swearing at the refrigerator. I just stopped quietly and watched. The butter, take it out of the box. We had some that said butter, some that said reteb, and some that were backwards. And she, God damn it, she's swearing butter, 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 butter. They all had to be even and say butter.
Oh,
and I let her do it. Yeah. She's got nothing else to do. So that was her. She was pissed off about the butter.
Yep.
She's 96. She's
Right.
got nothing else to do.
Right.
But that's your point. You'll find something to worry about or make a problem out of.
So the physical universe abhors, what does abhor mean? Hates.
Really, really, really hates.
A vacuum.
I mean, emptiness.
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 Right? So your mind is the same way.
Yeah.
Okay, so the reason why I'm bringing all this up is because that's what fear is that emptiness. You don't know. You're not sure.
And you stick bad things in it?
And you fill that vacuum.
Yeah.
With your ideas of what you think is going to happen. And then you justify it all by saying, oh, I heard this story. The worst. The absolute worst. You ready?
Yeah.
I read it on the internet. Oh, yeah. That couldn't be a lie, could it? That can't be manufactured. Some guy in his basement who won't even come out of his basement to take a leak, right? Because he's afraid somebody might see him, wrote that, and you believe him,
Yeah.
right? Now, there's a lot of other good things on the video on the internet, like video. So at least you can observe and at least try to see if it's true, right?
Yeah.
All right, so here they are. The 4 things that I would venture to say that fearful people don't know about and need to understand to wipe out their fear. So these are all anti-fear devices.
Okay.
Okay?
Good.
Here we go. 1, assignments.
Yeah.
You're looking at me like I said something wrong.
No. Well, some people don't know what that means.
I'm going to explain all that today.
Yep.
So an assignment contract or an assignment. 2, lease options, which we talk a lot about. Actually, it's not even the lease option. It's actually the option to purchase. It's not even a lease option. It's the option to purchase.
Yeah, a lease is a lease.
Land contracts, or as they are often called, they're land contracts, contract for deed, bond for deeds. They have multiple names. The reason why is because it depends on what state you're in.
Right. Same thing, different names.
Yeah, it just depends on which state, what the legal department called it in that state.
What do we call it in Connecticut?
Bond for deed.
Bond for deed. Okay.
The most common name is land contracts or contract for deed. Okay, and then the 4th one is land trusts.
Okay.
So if you understand these 4 devices, which I'm going to do my damnedest to go through today, and just I'm not even going to list them and talk about them. I'm just going to put them in our 7 deal structures and just talk about them depending on what deal you're doing.
Okay. So they fit in certain places.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you understand it, you don't have to worry about the fear. Because really, what are most people we talk to afraid of? Like I said, they're afraid of it's going to infect their other assets, right?
Right. If there's a judgment against them and they don't have the money, it has to come out of their house. Or I'll lose my house.
Right. They get foreclosed on, or they'll lose their family house and they won't have a place to live. They got $5 in the bank and they're worried that they need that for groceries and somebody's going to take it away from them, right? That's what they're worried about, right? Right. Yeah. So the irony of what I'm doing today are things that you don't hear much about in the mainstream real estate, right?
Yeah.
Why is that? The problem, get my thoughts here. The problem is most realtors and attorneys just don't get it when it comes to these tools. And they're often confused on how to use them. They're confused, like especially the trust, right? They'll confuse it with other business entities, like business trusts that require tax documents, ID numbers, bank accounts, right?
Oh.
You'll soon find out that I create a trust with a 2-page document. And you know what it's called?
A 2-page document trust?
It's called a deed.
A deed?
A deed.
But isn't the deed says that that's your title to the house?
Right. So it's called a deed of trust.
A deed of trust.
Right.
Huh.
So when they sign the deed, it automatically generates the trust. I don't need all that other stuff that people will go, which we're going to talk about this later, but they'll go to an attorney expecting them to know, and they don't.
Oh.
Okay. Or they'll confuse these documents as being risky because they are different or not mainstream. And you and I both know if someone doesn't understand something, the answer is no, always.
Oh yeah, just the fear of not knowing it, the doubt. Well, we'll just not do it.
Right. So in essence, our job as creative real estate investors is to educate the seller that this holistic approach is more financially healthy for them than talking to the big pharma addicting drug pushers with more side effects than illnesses itself.
Yeah, right.
So that's what this is like. You know, you watch on TV these TV commercials about these pills, and the picture of the older person with their grandchildren in the park playing is more powerful than the words that are being communicated with all the side effects.
Liver damage, death,
Right.
heart attack,
Right.
anxiety. Wait a minute, wasn't that for nervousness? And it causes
Right.
anxiety? Yeah, great.
So that's what happens in the world of real estate is people will listen to the lawyers or listen to the realtors expecting them to be the professionals and giving them good advice. Okay? Now,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that your lawyer is a bad guy. I'm just saying he's not, again, almost put money on, he's not going to tell you, I don't know anything about land trusts. Or you're going to go to him and say, oh, you're going to hear this podcast, and you're going to say, oh, I need to form a trust. And you're going to go to your lawyer, and he's going to say, I want to form a trust. And he's going to think in his mind, a business trust. Oh, we're going to need to get, tax requirements and ID numbers and bank accounts, and because he misunderstood the word. Because actually you did, because I'm telling you they're property trusts. You didn't duplicate the property portion of it, and you go to your lawyer and say, I need to open a trust because I want to buy real estate.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't know how many different kinds of trusts there are personally. This is interesting. Oh, there's a business trust, there's a deed of trust, it's a property trust.
A family trust?
Yeah, I don't know about those myself. I
And
know the ones we use,
Right.
but that's limited. I just do what you told me. Sign the trust, Pete.
Right. So the trust, the property trust, is specific to that piece of property, and all it does is just control the deed.
Right.
Okay. So honestly, if you don't know what you don't know. So you go to the attorney and you think you're telling him the right thing, and really you're not. You misunderstood it to begin with, and then you tip him off. And the next thing you know, it's a fat mess, and everybody's saying, no, you shouldn't do that. And then you'll believe the attorney, and you'll believe the realtor, and say, somebody like me just doesn't know what I'm talking about. Or I'm a scam, or, I'm not going to do that because my attorney told me not to do that. Well, was your attorney qualified to tell you to do that? Has he done any? I've done dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of them. How many has your attorney done?
Yeah.
And that should be the qualifying factor when you get advice. You should say, how many property trusts have you developed? And if he says none, then why would you take advice from him? Ask your realtor, how many lease options have you done in your career? If they said none, then why take advice from them? Right?
Sure.
I've done not hundreds, dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of leases.
Yeah.
Right? So
What you're saying is you should write this down, deed of trust. So one of the things I learned educationally, you have to ask for something, and to be specific, tell a person what you don't want. Like, I want the red pencil, not the blue pencil.
Right.
So if you at least have the right data from
today.
today.
I'm going to cover this in a few minutes. I'm going to go
Yeah.
through all this. We don't have to do it
That way they know what to ask for.
Exactly right.
Good.
So in essence, our job as a creative real estate investor is to educate these sellers that this holistic approach works, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what we're doing in essence, okay, and I know I've talked about this before, is we're taking a common person, right, or a homeowner, okay, and turning them into an investor. That's why it's so difficult. So we're taking their assets and showing them how they can get a better return on their asset.
Right. So when we do like a rent to own from an owner, instead of him selling it outright, he hangs on to it for a while and keeps making money.
Right. Now, can the realtor and the attorney do that?
do they want to? I think is the question.
Well, first of all, they don't get paid to do that. So if they did do what we do, they would make less money because they get paid on the gross sale, right?
Yeah.
And number two, they themselves don't do that. Now, some realtors do. Some realtors are investors and they're good at it, so you should listen to that person. But most don't. Because basically what we are is we are real estate entrepreneurs, right? What is an entrepreneur? An entrepreneur takes all the resources, puts them together to get a desired result, right? So the entrepreneur goes through the painstakingly organizational things to get to that result, right? And picks resources from sometimes the oddest places, right? So one of our what is the word I want here? One of our talents has to be financial planning, right? Because we're saying to our seller, did you know that if you wait 2 years for your payments, right, you'll get more money? And I've been indoctrinating you and others with my little sayings like, so, like, and you hear, I did it last night in the meetup. It just comes out. I didn't even think about it anymore. So it's like, well, it's like this. If you pay $1,000 for my $2,500 computer today and give me cash, how much do you pay for the computer? It's $1,000. But if you swipe your credit card and you pay for it over the course of, the next 2 years, you're obviously paying more than $1,000 for that computer, right?
Yeah.
That's what we do for our sellers, is we give them that concept, right? So what we do is we paint those pictures so they can see them quickly, and we don't have to spend a bunch of time, teaching them how to be a financial planner, right? So either the cogs in their head click or they don't. So that's why it's so difficult, because we're not in the house business, we're in the marketing business, and our true conversion is to get the seller to go from being an average person into being an investor. Because they own the asset. They're the true investor. We're the entrepreneur saying, hey, if you put your asset up, I can do this with it.
Yeah.
Right? I can turn that asset from a $200,000 asset into a $210,000 or $220,000 asset. Or if it's not making you any money right now, I can show you how I can spit off some positive cash flow every month. Or, it's not your equity's locked up in this house. I can give you 10 grand right now and unlock some of that equity for you. Or if you really want to unlock your asset, I can give you 60 cents on a dollar and pay you cash. Right? But really what you're doing is you're helping them decide how to manipulate the asset to the largest potential return that you could actually get.
Sure.
So that's why it's so difficult for us, because you have to find those people that are willing to consider that and don't have the pressing pressure of, I need all the cash.
Yeah. Sometimes they need the money right away for whatever reason. Sometimes they don't. It's funny, while you're talking, it reminds me that people are told often, people get worried about the stock market. Should I sell my stock? And they're usually told, look, if you just hang on to it, in the long run, it always grows.
Right.
Same thing with the house. Like, if you're worried about the house, if you just hang on to it, or it either grows or just keeps up with inflation, if nothing else.
Right.
So we're taught that as a general rule, but you can forget that sometimes on the short run. But that's the case of stocks and houses and probably anything. If you just get some coins and hang on to them, someday they're worth money, because there's not many left.
I mean, I just bought 2 coins for, I don't know, I shouldn't have bought them, but it was $218, I think. I think they were silver dollar pieces.
Yeah.
They're 2020 coins.
2000. Why are they worth that much already?
Because what happened is the mints, the places that make the coins, hadn't changed the back of the coin in 25 years, because there's a federal law that they can only change the design of these coins every 25 years.
Yeah.
So this is the first make of this new era, because they just changed. The 25 years was up, so now we're in a new 25-year period.
Yeah.
So I paid $100 and something for each one of these coins, right? What's it like in 25 years from now when I bought one of the first minted ones?
Sure.
Right? Just what you're saying, because I know that time is going to make them more valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And I bought them from a specific mint, right? So like because there's a bunch of mints. There's ones on the West Coast and the East Coast, and there's different places that make the coins, and there's certain runs on them, how many they make.
Yeah.
Right? So all those elements lined up, and I bought the coins.
Right, and down the road it'll be worth more. So,
right.
Like, I think I've heard it said this way. Is this right? Money grows.
Yeah, always. If you do it right, it'll grow.
Yeah, money grows.
Right. All right. So, truth of it all is, it's sad because prior to 1949, when the Realtor Association was legally formed, what we are going to cover today is how real estate transactions were done for thousands of years prior to 1949. Right?
Because this paperwork you're talking about isn't new. It's old. It's been around forever.
It's ancient paperwork.
It's traditional.
So just like today's fake news, these lies and deceptions are to line their own pockets only. It is not meant to service the seller to a large degree. Mm-hmm. That's the beauty of what I do and what you do and what people that follow me do, is once I find out what the seller needs, I can customize at least 3 offers to satisfy the seller's itch to close. Right? Unlike the realtor system, where there's only one way to close, right? And the seller has to like it or leave it. Right?
Yep.
If this wasn't true, how come there are so many for sale by owners out there?
Right.
Right? If their system was as good as they think it is, then why is there an organic or natural alternative? Right? And why are the laws written so you don't need to sell with realtors? Right? So if their system was so good, I mean, like our money is called fiat money, right? Fiat money means you have to use our coins and our bills by law. Mm-hmm. So if you bring Canadian money into the United States, technically you could be arrested for not using American money. Technically. The fiat money law says that. So if the realtor system was so good, how come there aren't laws that say you have to use it? Right?
Right.
If it was that good. Mm-hmm. In fact, the realtor system is, in my mind, actually a monopoly in a way. Right? Because where else or who else is their component? Or opponent, actually.
Oh, right. Well, you.
The problem is we are their opponents, but we're not organized.
Yeah.
So there is not a group out there that allows them to do that. So just like President Trump talks about the silent vote that he's going after, we have the silent buyers. We fly under the radar. We sneak around these mafioso type people, and I'm saying that because if you listen to episode number 90, I talk about don't deal with the real estate mafia. It's a spoof on the realtor system, but it is true, right?
Yeah.
They have a controlled way, and if you don't like it, they whack you. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean they kill you, but they ignore you. They like send you on their way, and they're like, get away from me, right? Let me give you a quick analysis of what I'm talking about here.
Yeah.
You ever tried to go look at a house as a buyer and call the sign out front? What's the first thing the realtor says to you?
Are you pre-qualified?
Do you have a proof of funds?
Yep.
And if you don't, what do? They whack you.
Yeah. Click.
It's just like what we do with prospect suspects, right?
Mm-hmm.
In fact, at this particular point, I just released last night on the meetup that we did, the monthly meetup, which was amazing. And I'm not saying that because I did it. I'm just saying because I had a lot of people on there, more than I normally do. And I get a lot of feedback and a lot of questions, right? But I just released a new program where I'm going to do a training in a couple weeks where I don't even want people to buy a house. I'm going to show them where to go find leads, like in 15 minutes, how to get 100 or 200 leads, how to text them, just to make an appointment. All I want people to do is to get in houses and start talking to sellers.
Yeah.
I don't want them to buy the house. I want them to take the pressure off of having to try to figure out what the offer is. All I want them to do is to experience. Just experience what you have to go through to get a house. And there are gurus that try to train this, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it one-on-one. I'm going to take a handful, I'm going to take 10 or 15 people, and I'm going to give them a lot of attention. And I'm going to send them in houses, and when they're done, they're going to come out, and we're going to spend our second 2 weeks of this program, because it's a 4-week program, just talking about what happened in the house.
Yeah.
Right? Going to actually have them do certain things in the house. I'm going to have a checklist and what to do in the house.
You're literally getting them over that first horrible hump by getting them through the front door.
Right. Because you don't know shit, and you want to know that you don't know shit unless you do that. And you want to know what the amazing thing of what I'm going to do, Peter? You want to know what the side effect is, which is the reason why I'm doing it, because I reverse engineered it, right? Mm-hmm. What I'm going to do at that point is, now that they're in the house, that person or that entrepreneur, real estate entrepreneur, okay, or professional home buyer as we call them, is going to find out what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are. So now when it's time for them to buy education, they're not just willy-nilly buying something and getting disappointed because it didn't give them what they want. Now once they're in the house and they go in the house a couple times and they talk to the sellers, they know where their weaknesses are, and they need to invest in those and strengthen those. They don't need to do the things they already know. They need to do the things they don't know. And by putting them in the houses and start talking to people, they'll know where their weaknesses are. Yep. And then their education will skyrocket because they'll be pinpointed on. And I'm going to help them with, oh, that weakness is this, or this weakness is that. Here's where you should like go get help. Either it's from me or somebody else, or go read these books. A lot of times I tell people to read books that I never even wrote. I read them myself and they help me, so I show them.
You sure?
Right? So I don't know why I'm going off on that tangent, but the realtor system is a monopoly, right? So where else is their opponents? This is like hotels before Airbnb.
Right.
This is like taxis before Uber.
Yeah.
This is like department stores before Amazon.
Yeah, those places that are going that are closing now.
Right. And we are like that. Okay? So enough chit chat. We've been going at it for quite a while here. So let's get down to business. Here is what I'm going to do today. Okay? I'm going to go through my 7 core deal strategies and explain what paperwork you need to do for each deal. Mm-hmm. Okay? Then the legal ramifications of that strategy because of the paperwork that you sign. Like, how obligated are you? Okay?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Now, here's what I will not be doing. I will not be doing this. Pay attention. What am I going to not do?
The following.
Okay, the following, right.
The following are not going to be done.
I'm not going to be talking about the intricate details of how to fill out these documents. Okay? And You can find all these documents, these precise and very tested documents that I use on my website at flippinghousesforrookies.com/courses. And once you get there, the course is called Every Document for Creative Real Estate. Every Document for Creative Real Estate. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
You can buy all these documents there. Some of them you could just find online, but like a lease option, you don't need to buy my lease options. But I can tell you right now, I have a lease option that I buy with, and I have a lease option that I sell with. They're different.
Yeah.
Right? So in the beginning, if you can't afford my forms, because they're not cheap, okay? If you can't afford the forms, then you're going to have some risk. Because I've tested these forms. I've been to court with some of them. Okay? And I've had multiple. When I say multiple, I want to say 3 or 4 attorneys look at most of the documents over the years. As I used them, I had different attorneys and I had different viewpoints or different takes on these documents.
Yep.
So it's not necessarily that I have documents that nobody else has. I've bought some of these documents and just altered them over the years from my mistakes and my experiences. Okay, so
And that gives you extra protection.
yeah. All right, so you can find those, like I said, at flippinghousesforrookies.com. Just go to the top right, courses, and the course is called Every Document for Creative Real Estate Investor. Okay?
Sure.
So let's start with the slot deal.
Mm-hmm.
So a slot deal is a sandwich lease option transfer. Okay? So basically what that means is you're going to go find a buyer. You're going to find a seller. We'll do that one first. You're going to find a seller that probably owes too much money on their property. It's probably over leveraged. They can't afford to or don't want to pay fees. Okay, so that's a tip off right there, because most of our creative sellers that we're going to turn into investors don't want to pay fees and they want to make the highest return.
Mm-hmm. Right?
Most of them. Okay, so those are qualifiers. We've been talking about this for weeks now. Those are pre-qualifiers. They somebody that says they don't want to pay fees, that's kind of like, how I talk about the chiropractor, and he goes up to somebody and he shakes their hand and says, "Hey, how you feel today?"
Yeah.
Right? You could literally do that. You could say, "Hey, I buy and sell real estate. Oh, I have a house for sale. Oh, really? Do you want to pay fees?" It would be the same thing as a chiropractor saying, "How do you feel today?" You see what I'm saying? Now, obviously, that would be blunt and brutal. There's other ways to do that, but that's an indicator. If they don't want to pay fees, then it's an indicator that they might be a prospect for you.
Right.
Okay?
Sure.
So a slot deal is when you are going, it's a sandwich lease option transfer. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to work with your seller. You're going to get them to sign a 1 or 2 page option agreement that says that you, the investor or the entrepreneur, now have the rights to sell their house. So they conveyed some rights to you. So if, Peter, you're the seller and I'm the buyer, and we sign this option agreement, the option agreement says legally that I have the rights to go sell your house because when I signed this document with you, I became a equity partner.
Because you gave me a couple of bucks.
Because I gave you, well, no. The couple bucks I gave you is for the rights to sell.
Yeah.
Okay? I'm not technically an owner, it just I have the rights. Because in real estate, you're just like a stock market. Stock market, you can buy the rights to sell a stock without having to buy the stock.
Right.
Right? So Apple's will say $300 stock, right? I can buy the rights, we'll say, for $25 and go sell that to somebody else. If anybody knows anything about online marketing, this is very similar to affiliate marketing, right? Where you're selling somebody else's product and they give you the rights to do that.
Okay.
Okay, so like if I was going to sell Ben Settle's books, he would need to give me an affiliate right to go sell his books.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's the same type of a thing. Okay?
Right.
So, A slot deal is the real estate entrepreneur finds someone that's willing to give them the rights to sell their house, which is called an option agreement.
Yep.
Okay. The investor now goes and finds the buyer, and he assigns those rights to his buyer. Now, if you're the seller, Peter, right?
Yeah.
And you give me the rights, and I pay $100 for the rights to sell your property.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I then can sell those rights to, we'll say, Emma for $10,000. And that's what a slot deal is.
That's pretty good markup, Bill.
Okay. Now, like Nelson Rockefeller said, own nothing but control everything. An option agreement, or buying the rights to sell your house, is that control.
Yeah.
You're buying the rights, not the house. Technically, you're buying and selling the agreement, two pieces of paper. So you bought it for $100 and sold it for $10,000. Which, by the way, that $10,000 is the rights to own that property. So your buyer, who's going to go in the house and live in the house and pay all the monthly expenses, right? Which is the lease portion. The lease portion is all the rules of what you need to do, what you can and can't do while you're occupying the house. Has nothing to do with buying the house. It just says, you got 2 years to live here, and then you assign the option rights to buy, and it allows you to just, at any given time, execute those rights. So if you need a year to fix your credit, it allows you to rent there, it allows you to live there, and then when you're ready, you just exercise your rights. When that happens, the $10,000 from the buyer goes from being the rights, having the rights of buying this property, to writing a purchase and sales agreement. It then turns into, or converts with a different form, which is the purchase and sales agreement, turns into the deposit of the house.
Right.
So
the actual deposit.
right. So when you have the $10,000 holding the rights for you to buy, it's just holding the house there, giving you the rights to buy, so the seller can't go sell it to somebody else. The investor can't sell it to 4 people. You own the rights to buy that house.
But they don't have to buy it, though, right?
They don't have to, no.
They don't have to. So they have the right, but they don't have to. But everyone else is held off. They can't just come in. So it's safe. That $10,000 makes it safe that this could be your house.
But if they don't perform, they lose their rights. They lose the $10,000. If they walk away, it's a non-refundable deposit, or a non-refundable consideration deposit, is what the legal name is, right? They lose their rights. So if I buy a house from you and I have the rights and I give you $10,000 for the option agreement, if I leave in a year and I got a 2-year agreement, I lose my $10,000. You get to keep it.
Well, the seller is holding his house at bay. No one else can touch it.
Right.
And you're putting him at a very big inconvenience. You're making him wait. So you have to at least pay for it.
Right.
Or pay us for it to help him out.
So what's amazing about all of this is that, like you said, the seller can't sell the house out from underneath the buyer.
Mm-hmm.
The buyer has all the control because they can execute or not execute, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the amazing thing is that the deed stays in the seller's name, right? Mm-hmm. So all the legal beagles are going to chase who when there's a problem?
The original seller, because he didn't sell it yet.
He's got the deed in his name. So legally, in our legal system, they say he's the owner, so he's got all the liability.
Right.
Right? So most important, a non-performance of this option agreement that I have with you, you lose the non-refundable option consideration deposit, like I said before, right? Mm-hmm. In my case, it's always $100. So I'm going to buy I'm going to pay for the rights to get that option agreement $100. I use 100. Some people use $1. Some people use $10. Some people use 1,000. It doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make the rights any stronger or weaker. You just need to have some legal tender to consummate the contract.
Right.
Right. So I use $100, which technically by the agreement gives me the rights to sell that $100. Right. And now because I have these rights to sell, I have an equity share in the property and don't need to have a license to sell it. Okay? So the worst that can happen is I lose my money.
The 100.
Yeah. Which is what I always say, or we always say, right? Because I always ask you, how do you not lose money in real estate?
Yeah, put them boom, don't put any in.
Don't put any in. And this is how you do it. Right? So the option consideration deposit gives you, you're buying the rights to not only sell the property, but in this particular case, control it. Because you have a lease in place too. So the lease allows you to control it, and the option allows you to have the rights to buy it.
And again, you don't have to buy it. Is where, because you're talking about risk today. The right, it's a great thing. You have the right to buy it. No one else can unless you assign it, but you don't have to. You're not stuck.
Right.
And to me, it just is a little bit like a realtor without the $100. He doesn't promise he's going to sell the house. He's going to try. If he doesn't, he doesn't. So what do you do? Sue him? I didn't promise.
That's exactly
no one promises.
right. No risk.
And the guy selling has a bit of a pickle. He has a little bit of a problem. The house is over leveraged, or he's trying to make extra money. So he does this little thing. He takes a little risk to see how it works out to do that, right?
Right.
He's in a little bit of a pickle, so he has to do something to get out of his little jam.
So I'm going to cover this in a little while, but I can't hold on any longer.
You're ready to burst.
Oh my God, this makes me nuts. I just want to grab a hold of people that tell me they have fear, and I want to choke them, so they have real fear. Because the fear they're talking
really worried about.
The fear they're talking about is it's point blank. It's just bullshit.
Well, it's just in their own heads.
But here's
it's just their own blah blah blah.
So let me back up my claim this way. Any one of my deals that I talk about could be assigned. What does assignment mean? I write a contract with you, and I have the rights to do whatever that contract says. Any given time, I can assign those rights to somebody else. Or I can assign the agreement that you and I made to somebody else. So where's the fear come in, Peter?
It's just in their heads. It's just fear.
Because they don't understand what I'm telling you. Because if and I'm going to talk about this later, if your second personality kicks in,
your what?
Your second personality kicks in. Okay. Or if you're just a chicken shit, or you can't handle confrontation, or you're one of those people that like go through major loopholes just not to have confrontation in your life, and as soon as it comes, you freak out. Okay? If you're one of those people, this is perfect. There's not any one of my 7 deals that if the shit gets heavy or thick, you can't just say, I want to assign it to somebody. And within days, you could walk away. You can go to a RIA meeting. You can go on. I bet you can go on Bigger Pockets. You can come to me. You can go on Facebook. Here's the amazing thing about assignments, Peter. And I notice I'm not reading my notes.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about assignments. Just like at the bank says, you go to the bank, and they never ask you where the deposit comes from, right? They just take your money and they put it in your account. They don't ask you how you got it. So I could have went down to Wells Fargo and robbed the bank and brought it to American National Bank and deposited it, and nobody would know. nobody would ask me. Until somebody
cares?
investigated it, nobody would ask me, right?
Who cares? They got the money. Who
Here's
cares?
the amazing thing about assignments. There's no rules on who you can assign to. Right? So you can assign it to your brother. You can assign it to the end user. You can assign it to an investor.
Mm-hmm.
You can assign it to whoever you want. I can assign it to a trust. I can assign it to my IRA. I mean, it doesn't say who you have to assign it to. The point is that you're off. If you're afraid, you're off the deal.
Yeah.
Somebody else now has that obligation that you made with the seller. So, the slot deal we don't talk about enough, because there is a whole world out there of assigning agreements and making fees legally. Okay? I'm going to stop there because I got some juicy shit to go over that I don't talk about much. Okay? So the option agreement is the next one down.
Right.
Okay? This is simple. You sign one document, like we talked about, the purchase, the option purchase agreement with your seller. And now here's the weird part. Most investors think that they need to now perform and find those funds, right? So if you have a $200,000 house, right, mm-hmm. and an option agreement, the way my system says that you have to get 90% loan to value or 10% worth of equity,
right,
or more.
So
right?
and that gives you the price that you can pay for the house, 10% off the $200,000, right?
Right. So now think of this, and this does, we don't talk about this enough, Peter. Okay. So think about this. So 10% of 200,000 is 20 grand.
Yeah.
So it means that you got this option agreement for 180.
Yeah.
So here are your choices. You could then bring the house to the market and sell it for the 200 and make the 20 grand yourself. Mm-hmm. So whatever you can make above and beyond the option is yours. So for $100, you can make 20 grand, which I have done.
Yeah.
Okay. How about this? How about you just take the take the option and put it on an assignment? So one of the things I talk a lot about with option agreements is that you have to have a valuable final product. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said. I don't even know why I said. I don't know why I said that, because I was thinking of something else. I'm sorry. I want to back up. You have to have a unique selling proposition.
Okay.
Right. So in other words, why would somebody come to you and pay $200,000 when they can go to a realtor, or there's other houses like it of comparable magnitude that? So why would they want to come to you? What's the draw? What's that thing that's unique that would make them attract to your house?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right.
So usually that's price.
Yeah, that can always be like, so you might sell it for a little less than the 200,000, or other houses in the neighborhood are going for a little more than 200,000.
Right. Now, what if you advertise that house for 185,000?
That sounds like a good deal.
So think of it this way: you get an option agreement for 180. You could sell that option agreement for $5,000 to your end buyer, make $5,000, and they save $15,000 on their closing.
They do. And the funny thing too is, people think, well, why would the seller do that? Well, if you sold to the realtor, it would cost them $20,000 to sell.
Right.
By the time you're with realtor fees and all that stuff, so, and that whole deal. So he's getting what he gets anyways.
They're still going to have some of that. They're still going to have some closing cost, which is really just your conveyance tax and your legal stuff, right?
Yeah, but it's not the whole 20 grand.
But you could take that option agreement that you saved them. Forget why you got it. Just get the concept for now. You got that option agreement for $180,000. Most amateur investors that I'm talking to on this podcast think that now they have to perform. They signed a legal document saying that they got to come up with $180,000 within the term of that option. We'll say 3 months.
I mean, do you think they have to pay it themselves personally?
They think that they're legally responsible, and that that's where the fear comes from, because they don't know. They think that they're legally responsible to show up with 180 grand within the next, and they have no idea where they're going to get the money from. What I'm telling you is you can actually take that same piece of property and put it on Facebook Marketplace saying that you're selling it for 185. Everybody else is saying 200. You're saying 185.
Yeah, and watch people flock on that one.
Right? Now all of a sudden you have a shit ton of people looking at the house. And what you're going to do is once you find your buyer, you're going to explain to them that you have an option agreement and you're going to assign it to them for $5,000. So they pay the $5,000 and they can write a purchase and sales contract. They either can write it with you and then you show, so they can write the purchase and sales contract with you, and then you, when you submit to their lawyer the purchase and sales contract, you also submit the option agreement. You don't want to match your buyer and your seller together because they'll cut you out of the deal.
Oh, right.
You can put an offer of memorandum on a deed saying that there is an option, and you can try to cloud the deed, but there's ways to get around it with a good lawyer. My point is that you can use an option agreement. So option agreements is much better than wholesaling, right?
Yeah.
Imagine if you could get a 10% discount, which is not hard to negotiate. Imagine if it was 15%. You could do what I'm talking about with assignments. So you can sign an option agreement. So we have a seller, we're on the phone with them, and all they'll do is take cash. We normally say to those sellers, because I teach this, we normally say to those sellers, well, if you don't take terms, well, go pound salt. Right?
Right. Because we're trying to do deals that are,
so what
deals.
I'm saying is I realize that we're missing the boat, because you can say to the person, what's the best you can do? What's the best you can do? You sure? I got a big bag of cash. What's the best you can do? I can do 180. Okay, here's how it works. And sign an option agreement. Right? Show the house. Even if they're living in it, you can just show the house. Right? And then just assign for a fee, assign the option consideration document to them and make a fee.
And is that the usual, 90 days to do?
Options can be as long as you want. So if a realtor does it for 6 months, ask for 6 months. If you perform in 6 weeks, then that's good.
Sure.
But you don't, because normally what we would do in the past is we would try to go find the buyer, get them qualified, and see if they qualify.
Oh, like for a cash sale, like right now.
For 200.
Yeah.
And execute our option.
Right, but you can just give them the option, and if it takes them a year or two to get qualified, the deal still goes through.
No. That's on a lease option. What I'm saying is on a regular which is why we don't use them much. If on a regular option agreement, we would go find a cash buyer for $200,000 because we have a list or wherever we find them, and they would close, and we would get the difference between the 180 and the 200.
Okay.
What I'm saying is you don't need to do that. That's too tricky. What I'm saying is just to sign that document, let the person that's buying it get a $15,000 discount, and you make a $5,000 fee. Right?
Is that different than just selling it to somebody for the 185?
Yeah. No, that's what you're doing. You're selling it. I don't understand what your confusion is.
Well, I haven't gone through one of those with all the little details. So you normally would sell it for $200,000?
Normally, with an option agreement, you would sell it above and beyond whatever you got. And you would have to go get the seller qualified, all that kind of stuff. Right? Now, because of time, I'm going to move on, but I'm going to drop a bomb before I move.
Yeah, okay.
Okay? Check this out. I actually have, and I think it cost me about $6,000 to make. I'm not sure. I think I bought the document and then I had it altered. Okay?
Yeah.
I could actually take more than one deposit on a house.
Yeah.
Because it is one document. It's a receipt that we give that explains all of it. So I could sign an option agreement with you for $180,000. I can put it on Facebook and Craigslist and advertise it and show it. I can get somebody to give me $1,000 deposit, right? And I could actually have 3 or 4 people give me $1,000 deposit and have all them working on their financing, and the first person that comes up with their financing in the deal first gets it.
Nice.
So I don't have
That's
to.
awesome. That's awesome because, you know, I've been through this, like even just getting a tenant deal. Which one should I pick? Which one should I pick? Right?
Right.
Because you have to tell people, forget it, I got this person. But in this case, you can have several people and have that little bit of time to see what actually works out and take the best one and not lose the other 3 or 4.
So you understand what I'm talking about here, Peter? Everything we're talking about right now is what? The paperwork.
Yeah.
The paperwork. Is it worth investing in the paperwork? Well, yeah. I mean, can you do what I just said? Do you have that document that cost almost $6,000 so that you could take multiple deposits and do this?
It'll cost you $6,000.
Yeah, it doesn't cost them that. It doesn't cost them that. I charge a fraction of that for the documents.
Mm-hmm.
But people like want to spend money on their education and study videos and all that. I get it. Truth of the matter is, if you had these forms and just listened to this podcast, you wouldn't have to do all that.
Well,
Who else is talking about getting an option with your cash buyer, the guy that's on the phone? Because I hear about this in my group all the time. All they want is cash. Well, then do this strategy. Find out how much cash they want.
Yeah.
Get an option agreement signed with them, and go get an assignment fee. It's better than throwing that lead in the garbage pail. You could make $3,000, $5,000, $10,000. I don't know. It depends on the price of the house. Hell, you could just make $1,000 assignment fee.
Well, the thing is, and you said this a few times, but if you guys haven't heard this, the amount of money is just balanced by the amount of time you put in. You think,
Right.
I want to make $30,000 on a renovation. Yeah, that takes a year.
Right.
How about make 1,000 in 2 weeks or a month?
Right.
And another 1,000 in there. What's wrong
Right.
with that? So it's a matter of the
Exactly.
time you put in.
Good. So, does this make sense?
Yeah, also what makes sense is you say this once in a while, and I'm not thinking along these lines, but you say when you're looking at a house, you're thinking of the paperwork. I said, how did we get to the end of the deal already?
Right.
Well, you have to see how it's going to wind up, and you kind of work your way back. I can use this paperwork, that means I can do this, and I can offer that. But having the paperwork is where you wind up. If it doesn't fit the paperwork, you can't say anything now, and you always have that in your mind because you've done it so often.
That's right. So let me ask you this question. If I sign an option agreement with you for $180,000 on a $200,000 house, right? And I give that document to you. If I don't perform, what happens? Do I get sued? Can you sue me?
Well, it's an
No.
option.
What does the word option means?
Yeah. I mean, we have a real estate meaning, but just look in English. You don't have to. It's an option. Do you want this or not? No, I don't want it. You don't have to do it.
Right.
And we have a nice legal real estate definition, but it's just don't have to.
Right.
And there are people that are in situations that'll let you do this because they're a little bit stuck and you're trying to help them. You're not taking advantage, they're a little bit stuck. And they'll give you the opportunity to help them, like you give a realtor who doesn't perform and just moves on.
So I just
Chill out.
Googled option.
Yeah.
And it says a thing that is or may be chosen.
Yep.
A thing that is or may be chosen.
So is chosen or may be chosen.
Right.
Right? Okay.
So it's something that you may want to do. Buy this house. But you're on the runway. You're the only one that has this decision to make. Nobody else. It's not like, oh, well, if I don't take it, John's behind me and he's going to take it. No, you're the only one. That's what you
you've locked
paid
it
the
up.
rights for.
Yeah, you
To
locked
be
it up.
the only one. You locked it up. That's right. So my point is will you be pissed off if I don't execute the option?
You know, I've done a couple where something wasn't great about the deal when I was practicing. Didn't work out. They weren't pissed off. They were just disappointed, but
Yeah.
they knew what was wrong.
But they're not going to sue me because I didn't perform. I did not sign that document with my personal agreement that I was going to give them $180,000.
Nope.
Right? I didn't give that to them.
Nope.
So, is that a safe document to sign?
Hell yeah. Hell
it's
yeah.
It's not personally guaranteeing that I'm going to have to show up with 180 grand. It's allowing me to choose if I want to, I could, which means I can then go find my buyer or the person that wants the house and get them to put up the money, and then I can choose to actually go execute the deal. Okay? Number
There's your
3.
risk factor.
There's
What's
that?
Risk factor.
There's
factor.
not much at all, right? The risk is with you marketing it and finding your buyer, your seller. And I get that all the time. What happens if you don't find a buyer? Well, you lose your 100.
Yeah.
Why would any person listening, because we have thousands and thousands of downloads on every episode, why would we not have every single person listening to us right now go and try to do one of these deals? Just try. Just get in a house and just try. You don't have the paperwork? Well, Google, Google option, a real estate option in, Keokuk, New Jersey.
Yeah.
Or, East Bumfuck, New Jersey. Pardon my French. You know what I mean? But it's like,
Bill,
just go Google it.
Bill, you can say New Jersey.
Yeah. Right? Just go Google and just go in a house with that lease and just see if you can get them to sign it.
Right.
I'm sorry, not that lease, that option. And just do this one strategy. No leasing, none of that other stuff. Just do this one option. Just go in and negotiate. Say, what's the best you can do? No, I got a big bag of cash. What's the best you can do? And the big bag of cash is coming from your buyer.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't anybody do that?
Well.
What are you afraid of? What are you afraid of?
Well.
Talking to somebody?
Probably. But factually, there are several steps that are involved in this. You've always said do one step at a time. So the only advice I can give people is before you really get involved, just do the beginning step and notice that it actually works.
Right.
People will call you and you can go in the house and you can talk about doing a lease. Right. Then you think, well, geez, what if nobody buys it? I have news for you. People buy stuff all the time and the pool is very large. That's the hard. I wonder which was harder. The hard thing is just getting the house compared to finding the buyer. Once you get the seller to say yes, the buyers are easier, way easier. I just rented a condo. I rented a condo. It's the same thing like renting something. They come out like flies.
Yep.
You just pick the best one.
And so what if you can't find somebody? You blew $100.
Yeah, and if you don't, but have you ever offered a house on a rent to own and nobody answers the ad ever?
No. So Peter, you and I were in New Jersey at a real estate conference.
Yes.
And we went to an Italian restaurant.
Cherry Hill, New Jersey.
So you remember it. How much did we spend?
Yeah, they have no left-hand turns. You can't take a left.
How much did we spend that night? I don't remember the bill. I think you paid it.
It was $97.
That was it?
Yeah.
I thought it was more than that. Okay. So we spent $100.
Mm-hmm.
What did we spend the $100 for?
Just the pleasure. I don't know, the pleasure of the meal, the atmosphere.
Okay. Well, we don't remember do you remember the taste of the meal?
No.
Okay.
All I remember is the salad we had up in Boston last year. That's all I can remember.
Okay. So that means we spent $100 for the memory and the experience of having that meal.
Yeah.
That's what we spent $100 for. All right. Now, when we spent the $100 originally, obviously, it was to put food in our stomach so we can live another day.
Right.
But we picked that restaurant and we did that for the experience of doing that.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't our listeners spend $100 for an option to give to somebody just for the experience of doing it?
Exactly.
It's the same thing as going out for dinner with your wife or your husband or your kids or at a birthday party. You're trying to create an effect.
Right. And
so your $100 is going to create that effect, either in your head or whoever you're going with you. Now, in your particular case, you created an effect with me because you bought me dinner that night. And I still talk about it. What's it been, a year or longer?
At least 2.
At this particular point, I want to get in the car and go back there. I do, because it was that good of an experience. Okay, I want to reenact it.
Wasn't the waitress really nice too?
Everything was freaking awesome,
Yeah.
right? So why wouldn't somebody on this call just spend $100 and go out and find one of these deals and just have the experience of going in the house and doing this deal? For the $100, it's worth it, just to see if I'm telling you the truth.
Yeah, everything I do that I've learned from you is I take it as a learning experience. I don't even worry about, is it going to work? Am I going to buy it? And if something doesn't work out so high, I go, oh, I see. I'll do it this way next time. And I don't worry about it. You can't worry about it.
Right.
Why spend $10,000 to learn something?
But
you
you and I have been together for what, 5 years now? You've never been in court. Nobody's ever chased you. Nobody's taken their guns out. It's never been a risk.
But people are not even mad at me.
Right.
You know, you talk about people getting pissed off. I haven't even had to get pissed off at me.
Right. I do. I get pissed off at you, but you're used to me with that.
Yeah, you're being better lately.
Yeah. Number 3, rent to owns. Okay?
Yeah.
So rent to own is a lease with an option. The difference between all right, so let me back up. The paperwork is similar to a slot deal. You're going to have an option agreement and you're going to have a residential lease agreement.
Yeah.
They're separate, but they're tied together with the words. Okay? So you can use one without the other, but you can put the two of them together and they talk about one another.
I got you.
Okay? So this deal is the same as a slot deal, except in a lease option or a rent to own, your seller and your documents are going to be separate. See, with a slot deal, you're going to sign an option agreement and you're going to assign it to your seller.
So the seller and the buyer get more directly connected.
Well, the same document, so your buyer is going to know the deal you made with your seller.
Yeah.
Because they're going to see the document.
Yeah.
And a lease option, because you're going to get 15% worth of equity and 20 to 25% in cash flow, you may not want to show that to your buyer. So you're going to have one set of options. You're going to have an option and a lease with your seller. You're going to have a separate option and a lease with your buyer. Okay? So what happens is they're different numbers and you don't want each other to see what the numbers are. So you're going to have two agreements and you're in the middle.
Right.
Which is why they call it a sandwich lease option, because you're in the middle. Mm-hmm. So if I were to sign an option agreement with you, Peter, for $180,000 and I'm going to pay you $1,200 a month, I might sell it to Emma for $200,000 and she's going to pay $1,600 a month.
Yep.
I don't want each, and not that I'm trying to hide anything, but just to create less human greed. I'm gonna keep them separate. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, they can think, well, gee, why didn't I do that? Well, you can't do that because you don't know how to do that. And the seller couldn't sell it. The buyer couldn't buy it. We're working hard to find these deals because you don't get one every day.
So I have a question.
But why annoy them?
I have a question.
Yeah.
If you go to flippinghousesforrookies.com/virtual, there is a 42-minute video there that shows how you can buy real estate virtually. We did that during the coronavirus. I did that. Mm-hmm. On the bottom of the page, I sell for $37. I sell a calculator, an Excel calculator, where you can take 4 or 5 comps or 6 comps, from Zillow and Redfin and Realtor.com and PropStream, any place you can get comps. You put them in this Excel calculator, and it automatically generates 3 offers. Those 3 offers then get put into my offer pack, which is 8 pages long, which includes the letter of intent with 3 offers, right? Plus all the frequently asked questions and all that kind of stuff. And you send it to your seller.
Yep.
Okay. As well as there's the text scripts on how I text them, plus the phone scripts. Plus I also included, this is for $37, Peter. Plus I included the 1-page lease option agreement that I used to lock the deal up. Now, if I'm in Connecticut and I want to do a deal in Florida, and I lock this deal up, let's say I do a rent to own like we're talking about, and I get 15% worth of equity and we'll say 20% in cash flow.
Yep.
I'm in Connecticut. That's 1,500 miles apart. Actually, it's 1,460 miles because I've driven it a lot. It's 1,500 miles apart.
Yeah.
How am I going to manage that property? How am I going to do property management on that property?
Use a realtor.
Okay. So how much would I pay somebody to manage that property?
How about 1 month's rent?
No. That's to find the deal. So the
Right,
realtor's going to find the deal. So how much am I going to pay a property manager to control that property?
Well, I guess I'm confused because I thought the buyer, because he's going to be buying the house, doesn't he take care of all that stuff?
Right.
You still want somebody to watch over it a little
Well,
more?
I'm just
on top of
saying.
that?
I'm just talking about these people that have these concerns because I don't have these concerns.
Yeah.
Here's the point that I'm trying to make. Suppose I were to sell, if I were to assign that agreement to somebody else, do I have to worry about it?
So another real estate guy in Florida, or
Yeah.
in that area,
Another investor.
assign it to him.
Right?
Yeah.
Suppose I find that deal and I don't, and there's like $200 or $300 a month, and there's like it's a skinny deal and there's not that much in it. Could I put it on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace or Let Go or any one of those places? Right? Could I find somebody to just take this deal off my hands and pay me a fee?
Yeah, give you some money for your work, sure.
Okay?
Well, what's funny is there might be deals that you don't really know how to do. There's some aspect of it you're not sure of, but there's always somebody who knows how to take care of that. So, some lien, some problem with the chimney, or just whatever. You know, the landscaping is horrible.
Is
Somebody
it
goes, "Oh, I love that."
possible, you're 100% correct, is it possible that I could do a master lease option with an investor? So if I'm paying $1,200 a month, I can charge him $1,400 a month. He can charge his end user $1,700 a month.
All right.
So is it possible I could do what I say I could do for my sellers? I could rent it without having the landlord obligations because the guy that I'm assigning the contract to or signing a master lease option with actually is taking all the management responsibility, and I'm just collecting a couple $100 a month just to pay the seller.
Yeah.
Could it be that way?
Yeah.
Could I just shorten my deal up a little bit and not manage the property? Yeah. Okay.
A lot of options there. Oops, I said that word.
There's a lot of choices there. That's what the point I'm making. The point that I'm making is that yet again, here's another deal that we didn't have to personally sign and have to worry about coming up with the money. There's no bank loans, there's no personal guarantees, and if I back out on any one of these deals, there's going to be disappointment and maybe somebody barking at me, but I'm not going to go to court. Okay, so we're going to move on to getting the deed because honestly, I have done this. We're going to talk about this, but we could do a whole show on getting the deed. But I'm going to tell you a couple of things that nobody is talking about.
Yeah.
Now, they claim on my meetup last night there's some guy named Pace that said this, so I got to go listen to his shit because if he did, I got to talk to this guy because I know I figured this out on my own. Okay, so now pay attention. First of all, this is where getting the deed, this is where you start getting some liability. Okay, you would think putting the deed in your name would give you liability. First, here's the documents you need. Okay? You're gonna need a warranted deed of trust. You're gonna need a declaration of trust. So the deed puts it in a trust, the declaration is all the rules of the trust. That does not get filed, the deed does.
Okay.
You have to have an authorization of release to give to the bank, saying that you have permission to talk to the bank on behalf of your seller.
As a trustee.
Right.
Okay.
Well, it doesn't matter that you're a trustee. You just have to have an authorization saying that you could. If you call yourself the trustee, that's fine. You don't even have to do that. It's just One doesn't have anything to do with the other. It just so happens that we do that because you're the trustee. Okay?
Yeah, I didn't think they would do that unless you were, but if the seller gives you permission, you can you can get it. Got it. Okay.
So that's an authorization of release of information form. That's number 3. So let me back up because I want to do all these so it's not confusing. So you have a warranty of deed of trust, you have a declaration of trust, you have an authorization of release. Number 4, you have an escrow letter, so you can call and find out what's going on with the escrow account, the taxes and insurance and all that stuff. Number 5, you have to have a limited power of attorney for the property, nothing else. And number 6 is what Ron LeGrand calls a CYA letter, cover your ass letter. Really what that is a letter of agreement that tells the seller that there's such a thing as a due on sale clause, and if it gets triggered, you're going to do everything you can in your power to make sure that that the loan is taken care of. But at the end of the day, if you can't do that, they can't sue you. Okay. Now, I'm going to cover this. So those are the 6 documents. I don't think I've ever said them on a podcast before. Those are the 6 documents. Okay? I'm not going to cover all these here. If you want to hear how to do a subject to deal, go to episode number 169, podcast episode number 169. It's called The Insider's Secret on How We Do Subject to Deal Structuring. We've already covered this for 90 minutes, Pete and I. Okay. Yeah. Here's what you need to know now. The deed forms and puts the house into a trust. Like I said, no lawyer needed. Okay. The bank sees the house went into a trust and thinks it's some sort of estate planning by the family, and doesn't trigger the due on sale clause ever. Okay.
Right, and I've been your trustee on properties, and I've made those phone calls to the bank. And folks, you're just talking to a lady at a desk, and she says, what's the information? Yes, send me this form. Thank you very much. And she goes on to the next person. I don't know who's thinking of anything at the bank. They're getting paid, and the forms are there, and they just say thank you, and they go on their merry way.
In my career of 18 plus years, and hundreds of deals, and a vast majority, and probably 25% or more of my deals are subject to, because that's my favorite one. Yeah. I have never met the due on sale clause police. The mortgage company doesn't have them. There's not a person in the mortgage company that's the due on sale clause police. So I don't know what people worry about it for.
No, they're getting paid. I mean, the whole point is, my kid worked at a bank. They push them to get mortgages because they want the interest. They don't want them paid. They want them sitting there paying interest.
Right. They want payments.
They're in the business payments, of they're happy. Payments, yeah. They're not rocking that boat.
Now, I'm going to go quick because of the time. But what you could do is have your seller be the beneficiary and you be the trustee. Ooh. Nobody does this. Nobody does this.
Well, that would make the seller feel pretty comfortable with him being the beneficiary, no?
In the trust declaration, it states that the trustee signs all the documents, not the beneficiary. Why would that be?
Well, you have to remain in control, no?
The beneficiary is having a trust to hide himself to hide his wealth.
Yeah.
That's why he's the beneficiary.
Yeah.
Or, more importantly, if you're just doing it for like family, the beneficiary, why are you putting this in a trust? Because the beneficiary expects to die, which means they can't sign the paperwork, which is why the trustee is the one signing the paperwork.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So the beneficiary shouldn't sign the paperwork because the trust was set up on their behalf to either hide the wealth, or if they pass away or they become incapacitated, the trustee can run the funds.
Right, and then the will has everything going to the family, whoever's in the will.
Well, there's no will. I mean, if you do, well, yeah.
I always think of the beneficiary as who's going to get the money in the long run, but that's a will thing. This is just, it's his property, he's the beneficiary. I got it.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And whatever happens, there it is.
So here's the amazing thing. If you go on to Google, which I did last night on the meetup, and you type in there HUD statement, HUD, right? HUD
Right.
statement. It's a government document. Line 203 of the government document says subject to number. Taking over the mortgage subject to.
And this is the statement when you buy a house, right? That's what you're talking about. Like when you buy a house from Realtor, the settlement statement with all the prices,
All the
and who
numbers
bought
on
what,
it.
all the
All the numbers on it.
taxes, and all that stuff. What line number again?
203 says taking over subject to.
You showed me that once.
Okay?
I have some here. I pulled it out. Like, really?
Now watch
I
this.
forget the number on it,
Watch
though.
this, because I'm going to disabuse all the non-believers right now. You could
Yeah?
literally have your attorney or closing agent close on this subject to deal 100% legal.
Because instead of you doing it tableside in the person's home like you usually do, if they're nervous, you go to the lawyer, and he does it.
Right, and he does it. And what the lawyer does is he uses your paperwork, or the paperwork I have if you buy it from me. Mm-hmm. He does the closing from the owner into the trust. He forms the trust, does the closing, reads all the paperwork, makes your seller feel really comfy.
Yeah.
And then what you do before you do the closing is you actually have the seller sign with you personally, an assignment of their beneficial interest. So once the lawyer does the closing and the trust is all set up, the beneficiary signed a document with you as an assignment of the beneficial interest.
Does that make you the beneficiary then?
Makes whoever I want to be the beneficial. I can assign it to somebody else. So now, if I have a subject to deal and I don't want to keep the property because it needs repairs or it needs maintenance or it's too far away from me, I can find an investor and have them pay me $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, whatever for this assignment. And all the subject to paperwork is all done for them. The trust is done. They put their name on the authorization and release, and they're done.
That's
They
like a
own the
turnkey
property.
deal.
It's like you did all the work, and it's like you just gave them, because of a beneficial of interest assignment. And we use lawyers and closing agents to close a subject to deal. And there's a big thing in the industry, like people think this is not safe or it's not. What you got to do is you got to make your seller the beneficial interest, and then once the closing's done, reassign his interest to somebody else, or you, or whatever. Or if you're going to keep the deal, here's what I would do. If you're going to keep the deal, do the closing, right? Have the seller be the beneficial the beneficiary. Once you do the closing, have an assignment of the beneficial interest from the seller into your entity, your LLC, or whatever you're going to hold the property in. Oh, by the way, the declaration of trusts says that you can change trustee with the stroke of a pen. There's a form you fill out.
Yep.
It doesn't even have to be filed. You keep it in your filing drawer because the declaration of trust is not filed either. The only thing that's filed is the deed of trust, saying that this person is a trustee. So if Peter's my trustee and something goes wrong with Peter, I can actually sign a document saying that Peter's no longer the trustee, and then I can sign another document saying that Emma's the trustee, and I put them in my jacket, and it's done. My deal jacket, and it's done. Right?
Gee, Bill, you sure know a lot about paperwork.
It is the paperwork. Okay? Point is even though you're putting the deed in your name, how risky is it? You can assign the subject to deal to somebody else, the beneficial interest, and now they have the liability. You don't even have to stay in the deal.
Yeah.
So what are you worried about? Where's the risk? I haven't found one of these deals that have a risk yet. Have you?
No. And banks sell mortgages to other people all the time. Things get passed around and sold.
Yeah.
So this is not unusual. Things move around.
Don't own anything in control at all.
Mm-hmm. And if you do own something, have a way to get out of it.
Right.
Sell it.
Rehab retail, the fifth one on the list.
Yeah.
So this just needs a purchase and sales contract. It doesn't need more than that, which is only good to get you to the closing. So it's the roadmap to get you from a verbal agreement. It's like the written roadmap that gets you from a verbal agreement to the closing. And the definition of closing means deed transfers from one name to another.
Yep.
So closing means that somehow, some way, however it's done, the closing ends and there's a new owner's name on the deed.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
You can back out of these documents easily. A purchase and sales contract, you can back out of them easily anytime if you wish without personally guaranteeing them. Once you close, you're on the hook for the personal guarantee. Because there's not anybody that's going to lend you money without a personal guarantee. Which is why I always say these are the hardest deals and the most dangerous deals to do. So this is the only one. Now, there are loan companies out there that will allow you to buy these properties under an entity. You have to find them, and then they will, the entity, if it's strong enough, they will not need a personal guarantee. It's not likely, it's not easy to find, but they are out there. I know that one of my coaching clients was using somebody in Long Island.
Really?
If you want to do this, if you want to not personally guarantee these loans, then what you need to do is you need to look for an asset lender, not a personal guarantee lender. They're not easy to find. They can be found, and they're out there. Their fees are going to be absorbent.
Yeah.
These are the guys who are going to pay 15% interest in 4 or 5 points.
Ouch.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Here's the point. When you get the purchase and sales contract, it's not a legal binding contract that you have to close. All it is a roadmap. It's just a written agreement of how you're going to get to the closing. Okay? You don't have to worry about signing a purchase and sales contract, especially if you're using the state's contract. There's a lot of what we call weasel clause, a lot of ways for you to get out. So don't worry about that. Worry about the deed being your name. This is the only deal that we have, which is why we don't do a lot of them. This is the only deal that we have that could personally sting you, because most lenders are going to want a personal guarantee. Which is, again, why we talk about you shouldn't be doing these deals. And there's so many people out there that watch A&E or the other cable TV shows, and they want to do flips because they saw that they made $43,000, which was a lie anyways, because they didn't put in there their holding cost and their closing costs and all that other stuff. That $43,000 was probably only $23,000. But $23,000 is still a lot of money, and people get all googly-eyed and their eyes glaze over. Even Peter still does that. You still get glazed over on getting big fat checks. You're still chasing money. You know what I mean? And it's like, most people are going to be like that until you get through that and it becomes old hat and you realize that these creative deals are much better off than those other ones. I'd much rather have a deal like I just did, where I have $750 a month cash flow coming in for 2 years, than to make $20,000 or $25,000 on a flip. Because that $25,000 goes in the bank, and either it goes away in the next couple months because you buy another house or do something else, or it just gets used to pay your bills, and 2 months later you're broke again, or 3 months or 6 months or a year, whatever. A car breaks.
It goes fast.
Yeah,
it goes fast.
A car breaks. A credit card bill comes in. The hot water heater blows up. Your wife has an accident. You got to buy her a car. I mean, there's so many ways that I'd much rather have the cash flow. But that's because I've had both, and I'd much rather just do that. I'd much rather have it so that when COVID comes and I go to Florida, I don't have to work. I just collect my rents.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But that's just a lifestyle. Number 6.
If you look at it, this type of deal, the terms deal, is more passive income,
Right.
and flipping is an active job.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's the difference.
Number 6 is the wholesale deal. That's pretty much the retail, rehab retail deal, except the house is really ugly and it's unlivable. Usually rehabs could be livable, where the wholesales are usually not livable. In the mortgage industry, they call it a non-insurable house. In other words, you can't live in it.
It might not have heat. The water might not be running.
Right.
There's no furnace in it.
These we already know about. I don't have to cover those. That's the most common assignable contract. Okay. Oh, I almost forgot something very important. I need to back up because I wasn't reading my notes. I got all excited about the bond for deed.
Oh.
I got all excited about the getting the deed.
Yeah.
If your seller is worried about passing the deed on to you, in other words, you say that you need to put the deed in my name and the loan stays in your name, just use a contract for deed. And don't have them put the deed in their name and just control the property through a contract deed or a land contract or a bond for deed.
Yeah.
And just restructure the deal and not have them give you the deed and you still control it. If you're worried about the deed being in your name, and you could do the same thing with a rehab retail, as you can put it in a bond for deed.
And I think the way you explained this to me before, the listeners, it's a deed that goes into effect after you have certain things accomplished, like you'll do certain things. Then when that's done, 6 months down the road, a year, then the deed is implemented or enacted.
Just listen to the words. It says contract for deed. So you have a contract, and let's just say on the contract, you're the seller. You put, I want all my money in full. I want you to pay, $300 water bill every month, and I want you to pay, the rent. I want you to pay the mortgage payment every month. I want you to pay the taxes every month, right? It has all these things in there. So once you meet all of those obligations that you promised in the contract, then you have to relinquish the deed to me.
Okay.
One of which often is pay me $180,000.
Yep.
Okay. Probably the best way, the most effective way to buy real estate and make a shit ton of money is to buy them on contract for deeds. You buy them with a contract for deed and you sell them on lease options. Reason why is because the contract for deed gives you a lot of control. It allows you to have principal reduction on your mortgage. See, when we do a lease option, we don't usually get that in a rent to own. If we do a rent to own with a seller, then often, unless we manipulate the option agreement, we don't get principal reduction.
Right, because you're putting down the sale price on the
Right. So get this, Peter.
on the form.
Get this. I'm completely diverted. Get this, okay? Your seller doesn't know the difference between a lease option and a contract for deed. They'll sign the documents either way. The difference is your intelligence of which documents to use, because if you do a rent to own and you're new and you're ignorant to this stuff, it's fine because it'll get you a deal and get you started. But if you sign a contract for deed instead of a lease option, your profit center will increase because now you get principal reduction and you'll have a lot more ability to get tax write-offs and depreciation and all the benefits that you can't get until you get a deed. The land contract allows all that.
You get that even before the deed is consummated down the road?
Yep, you can.
Oh, really?
If you write it correctly, you can do that. Yes.
That's amazing. Yeah, because there's great benefits.
You have to write it correctly, but
Yeah.
you can pick up all those, the tax, especially if you file on record the contract for deed or a memorandum saying there is a contract for deed. If you file that,
Yeah.
then you can get all those tax ramifications. So there is a lot of benefits to using a contract for deed instead of a lease option. Right? So
Yep.
if you were to go in pecking order, the strongest and most strongest position you could be in, which would be the top, is you have the deed in your name. The second strongest is a bond for deed or a contract for deed. The third strongest is a lease with an option.
Yep.
Right? So
Yeah.
they all do the same thing. They all allow you to, the second two allow you to control the property without actually owning it.
Mm-hmm.
But the contract for deed has a much stronger language in it. Land contract, whatever you want to call it, has much stronger language in it.
Mm-hmm.
And it works well. Okay?
How come there's no courses on paperwork?
Because it's not sexy enough. I could tell you right now, this podcast, I could tell you just by looking on Facebook, there's hardly anybody listening to us right now because they don't understand how important it is. They don't understand that this is where the money is.
It's not a shiny object, huh?
Yeah, it's not a shiny object, yeah. Okay. Last thing I want to talk about is the owner financing. Now, owner financing, you start with a purchase and sales contract. Okay. And your closing agent, there is no canned documents for a owner financing deal. Your closing agent has to draft a note and a mortgage to do the closing. Mm-hmm. So you're not going to, I have examples of those, like if you were to buy my document course, there's examples of those in the course so that you can hand them to your attorney and say, this is what I want my note to look like or what I want the mortgage to look like. But they have to write them state by state and deal by deal because you'll have different agreements.
But you wind up owning the property with a deed and having a note to pay the owner financing like he's the bank. Right. Does it start with a purchase and sales to?
That's what I just said. So the first thing is you start with a purchase and sales contract.
Yeah, okay. So I have one, but I forgot how I did it. You were doing all my paperwork back then. Yeah. You still do.
So you start with a purchase and sales contract, which lays out how we're going to do the closing and what needs to be put into the note and put into the mortgage. Right. And then the legal beagles draft that. Now, you can use Legal Shield. I think that's $39 a month. Mm-hmm. Or Legal Zoom or whatever it is, legal whatever for, there's companies like that will help you with these contracts. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you can pay your $40 a month and they'll help. I don't know if they'll design the contracts for you, but they'll look at them for you to make sure that they're good. And they're national companies, so they understand. So I know Legal Shield is the big one that we use, or we used to use. My wife uses Legal Shield for some stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's, like I said, $39 a month. And she had a 45-minute consultation the other day with one of them about something she had questions about. So
they're on retainer, basically?
Yeah. Okay. So the last thing I'm going to say about owner financing is I have a lot of people that tell me they can't do lease options in Texas. That's a total myth. You just don't know how to do it. But if you really do believe that and you really are nervous, then what you could do is you could do owner financing in Texas. So in Texas, if you sign a deal, because their owner financing is like better than a lease option, you're probably better off to do a owner finance deal than a lease option, because a lease option in Texas is like anything else. There's time you have to get them out, where if you have owner finance in Texas, in literally 3 or 4 weeks, you can get them foreclosed on and evicted. I mean, they're quick with that in Texas. So why not use owner financing with your deals? If they have an underlying mortgage on the property, then what you're going to use is a wraparound mortgage, which is a owner financing. So if the owner owes $80,000 and they're paying you $100,000, what happens is the mortgage document reads that they have an $80,000 mortgage, and you're going to wrap the $20,000 worth of equity that you're going to pay them around the existing mortgage.
Then there's your $100,000.
And there's your $100,000. So your contract says you owe them $100,000, but it also says that you're aware that they have an $80,000 mortgage and he's getting $20,000 worth of equity. Mm-hmm. That's what a wraparound mortgage is. You do either one of those, they're considered owner financing, both of them. But more importantly, what happens is you can, once you get those contracts in place, you can assign them.
So you can't do the lease option to the buyer either. You do this. You assign it.
I'm saying you could do both in Texas, but there's a lot of hoopla that say that you can't do lease options.
Oh,
it's a myth. But if you're better off in Texas to do owner financing than a lease option anyways, because of the eviction and foreclosure procedure. They're better than the lease option rules. You can get somebody out quicker on owner financing than you can on a lease option.
Okay.
So if you're going to do that, if I was in Texas and I was doing business with you, what I would want to do is I would want to do owner financing with you, even if I don't intend to live in the property. I could either sell my agreement that I made with you to my end buyer for an amount, or I can sell it to another investor and let them go find the buyer. Okay. The point is I can assign that document or assign my rights to that document to you, and you can run the deal after that for a fee. Okay.
Yeah.
Or I could just do the Texas way to do it is just do a contract for deed like we were just talking about, and I could do a contract for deed for you and not take owner financing, and I can assign my contract for deed just like a lease option. So anybody that says they can't do lease options in Texas, they could do owner financing or they could do a land contract, and it's the same as a lease option. It works the same way, but most people don't know that.
Yeah.
They just listen to what somebody said on a podcast or on a video that didn't know what the hell they were talking about.
Well, you know, a lot of times when somebody says you can't do something, it just proves one thing: they don't know how.
Yeah.
And I just move on to the next person, see if they know how.
So, that's correct. So a lot of times you'll have to, if you do notes, you'll have to sign personally, right? So if you're worried about signing personally, then what I would do is if that person's willing to give you a note, then just do a land contract, and then you don't have to sign personally, right?
Okay.
Or maybe you're getting a slamming deal, you're getting a great deal, and you're willing to take the risk. Sign personally, go for it. That's the only time I would sign personally is if I'm buying at a low discount, a deep discount, or a low number. Then I'll sign personally because it doesn't matter. Like when we got a $180,000 house and we paid $27,500 for it, it doesn't matter that I signed personally.
I'll write those checks.
Right. However, what I do in this case is I use like I said, a contract for deed. If you don't want to sign personally, you can use that. Okay, which means that there's not a personal guarantee. Okay, so the only deal in my magic list of deal structures or strategies is the rehab retail, where you would need to sign personally because you're going to go get hard money loans or so the only way that I have done rehab retail deals where I don't sign personally is if I do a deal in somebody's IRA. Sometimes I don't sign personally there, but it just depends on who I'm borrowing the money from. Okay,
Yeah.
So sometimes because they don't require that, but maybe the seller will, right?
But you still have a trick up your sleeve. When you buy a rehab retail, you try to buy a little lower. So if you don't like it, you turn it into a wholesale and sell it.
Right.
Right?
Right.
They
To be
give you
honest
some
with you,
protection.
my best rehab retail move is that they're willing to give me a 12-month mortgage. Right. I give them, so if I'm going to pay my private lender 9%, and I'm going to buy a house, and my Mayo formula is $100,000, I offer them 109, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'll take that." Okay, well here's how it works: you're going to hold the mortgage for me for 12 months, allow me to renovate the house and go sell it, and then I give you the 109 when I sell it. So now you could prorate that 109 and trick your seller, but I don't want to do that and piss them off, so I just pay them the 109. So I do my numbers based on the 109 because, quite honestly, I'm going to pay my private lender that anyways.
Yeah.
It's part of the deal anyways. Why not give it to the seller? So if I buy the house and in 4 months from now or 5 months from now I got it renovated and I got it sold and closed, I give them their 109.
Yeah, and you save a lot of holding costs too, so it's not like you're terribly behind on the deal. You didn't lose much because holding costs are lower.
But it saves me from having to go find the money. So if that's the case, I could do my title search and I could do a closing, and they get a note from my lawyer saying,
yeah, and it's more likely it's more likely for you to buy the property because you're giving the owner more. And if they don't need the money right away, he'll go with you because you gave him more than the next guy who was like at 92 or whatever,
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then again, that's just knowing the paperwork and know how to do that, because that means I'm going to close with him with an attorney, and I'm going to have an actual, I'm going to use my private lender note with them. They're going to sign the private letter note, and I'm going to probably put the house in a trust, You know, a lot going on in that closing. It's all paperwork.
Yeah.
Right? And if they have an underlying mortgage, I'm going to have to do a wraparound with that.
Right? And if they have a home equity line of credit on the house, you have to freeze that so they don't go borrowing money on the house.
That's right. That's right. Okay. So to end off, as long as you do your paperwork so it can be assigned, there's no reason to have fear.
There's no good reason. There's no good reason. If you want to have fear, go ahead, have it. Just go right ahead and do it.
If you want to have excuses of your failure, then that's a good one. Tell me you're afraid.
Hey, how about this? Keep your fear, but do the damn deal anyways.
Right. Because in any point of any one of these deals, except for the retail, if you're freaked out, just assign the deal to somebody else. Or if, like I said, your second personality kicked in, sell it.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I'm talking about your second personality being your other half. Right?
Is that what that is? I've never heard you say that before, your second personality.
Schizophrenic.
Yeah.
Your second personality. No, in other words, no reason at all to like all of a sudden freak out.
Yeah.
It's just in your own head.
May I remind
or maybe because every one of us, you know as well as I do, you're going to act differently with your wife in private than you will with me.
Yep.
There's your second personality.
Yeah, and your third, and your fourth, and your fifth.
Sometimes.
But let me remind our listeners that the definition of courage is not doing things because you have no fear. It's doing things in spite of your fear.
That's right.
So who cares? Just go do it anyways.
So as far as I'm concerned, being blunt as I could be, your fear is manufactured out of your ignorance. Okay? So just not knowing what we talked about today makes you fearful. What we've covered today puts you light years above most other investors. You should listen to this podcast, like many of them, multiple times. Because we covered a lot of stuff today.
Yeah, that paperwork. I've heard you talk about paperwork, but half of that I don't think I've heard much about. Because you do paperwork on our deals.
Because it's not a sexy thing to talk about. It's not something that will get a lot of reviews and get a lot of people listening to it because they don't think they need it.
I know, but the funny thing is that's what people are really afraid of. And there's your answer. You use this paperwork, you can do this, you can do that, and they don't want to know the thing that'll fix it, which is not unusual when somebody has a problem. You say, here, fix it this way. They don't want the solution. They'd rather sit in their fear and have an excuse not to do things. Right. Go lose. Go lose that way.
So Nick on Facebook says, can't wait to listen to this again. Very informative. The detailed explanation on the option deal was great. Thanks. Cool. So there's somebody out there pitching for us, Peter.
There you go.
Please, 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 please. I have changed these podcasts by survey. We give a lot of information. You know as well as I do, Peter, we could have charged a few $100s and done a seminar or a webinar on this, and people would have paid for it. Yeah. Okay, because I've done it before. And it's for free, on a podcast for free. All you got to do is put your hour and a half or hour and 45 minutes or 2 hours, whatever it is in. I don't know how long I can keep up this pace, but I'm trying. My point is to keep your exchange in with me. Please go give me a review or give Peter and I a review. Go to whatever platform you're listening to the podcast on and give us a review. I don't care what you put on there, good, bad, or ugly, give us a review. Also subscribe. Subscribe to what we're doing, and to whatever platform you're on, so that when we go, go to Facebook, Flipping Houses for Rookies, and like the page, so that when we go live on Facebook, we're live. Go to your podcast platform and subscribe, so that when we go put a new podcast up, that it's there. Okay, new podcasts come up every single Monday. Yep. Or you can just go to Flipping Houses for Rookies. Top right-hand side, hit the button that says podcast, and all the podcasts are there. All the archive podcasts, everything is there. Or you can go to the very front page, Flipping Houses for Rookies, scroll down, and the podcast is there as well. And any given place, it says to leave us a review, and you can do that. So you can go to Flipping Houses for Rookies, scroll down, there's the podcast is there. Underneath it, it says give us a review, or you can click on the button on the top right-hand side, and there's a whole web page just for podcast. On the right side, it says give us a review. So there's no excuse not to give us a review. Okay? Also, don't forget, go to flippinghousesforrookies.com, top right-hand side is a link that says courses, and there's a course there that it's not a course, it's just a web page that has all my creative real estate deals on it. All these documents I'm talking about are all there. It's every deal you need, every document you need to make a creative real estate deal. It's what I've used for 18 plus years. Everything I've used is there. It's not a lot, and it's broken. It's not a lot of documents, but it's the way I use them that makes a difference when I talk about them. The clever thing I think we did, Peter, with the documents is I didn't just put a bunch of documents on a page. I broke them down. So there's a section that says slot deal. Here's a document you use for a slot deal.
Right.
Subject to deal. Here's a document you use for subject to. So if you have a subject to deal, you scroll down to that section. It has a brief description of what a subject to deal is, and then it has all the documents below it. You just download them and you just do them. Okay, so it's broken down by deal type, so you don't get confused. You don't have to go in there and listen to a 2-hour podcast to figure out which documents to use. You can just download them underneath each section. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, Peter. I think we've done enough damage. We're over and out. Thanks for being here. See you next week.
So long.
Thanks for tuning in to the hottest real estate topics on the planet with Bill and Pete. If you want to continue learning how to buy and sell real estate without money or credit, head over to flippinghouses.club for some cutting-edge real estate wealth tools. Or contact us at info@flippinghouses.club.